big silence.
Well, Demi-Leigh Tebow, welcome to the Big Silence podcast.
Hi,
Hi.
so good to see you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited about this.
I'm excited to talk to you too. And so I'll say you're an entrepreneur from South Africa and motivational speaker. Your philanthropy work is incredible. Your story, and also you were 2017 Miss South Africa and Miss Universe.
That is right. It feels like ages ago at this point,
I know,
but
but it's not. I was thinking, I always say like I predate everything to 2020, and I'm like, we kind of lost a couple of years, so it's only like
yeah,
a few years ago.
that's fair. So basically 3 years ago, right?
Yeah. So what was it like? I've never been to South Africa. What was it like growing up there?
Man, it is just one of it truly like Cape Town, which is,
Yeah.
one of our main cities, is truly one of my favorite places in the world. I grew up about 4 hours away from Cape Town in a very, very small, tiny little town. Like when I say tiny, it's literally named like the first slow town in Africa, which
Mm.
I actually don't even know what the definition of a slow town is, but you can make it up. You can envision what a slow town looks like. We would buy, our groceries on like the Saturday farmers market. Everybody truly knows everyone. I actually just got back from South Africa a couple of weeks ago, and I went back one to obviously see my family. Everyone is still back home. So I'm really the only one here in the US. And it was crazy. Speaking of years and how time flies, I actually just had my 10-year high school reunion.
Oh.
So talk about like starting to like that like age thing starting to creep up on me. It was like the first time I feel like, oh, kind of, yeah, like I'm actually getting older now. So, but being back home, I mean, you run into literally everyone
Yeah.
that you've known, that you've grown up with. And that's really sweet. I loved that about growing up in a small town. But in general, South Africa is such a vibrant country. I'm so grateful that South Africa was a part of, setting the foundation in my life. It truly shaped like the woman I am today, and the views I have today, the opinions I have today, the woman I am today. And I think in a big way, South Africa created a lot of resilience in me that wasn't necessarily always fun in the moment, but looking back now, it's something I'm so grateful for and wouldn't change for anything in the world.
Yeah, because now you live in Florida.
Yep, Florida's home for us right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you miss South Africa, or you go back there a lot?
Always.
Yeah.
I always there's, like my friends they came to visit me for, well, after COVID, everything was closed and lockdown and borders were closed. And so my friends that I made in the US, that the first time they were able to come and visit was last year, and they loved it so much they literally came back twice in 1 year. So, and now, whenever I go back, it's like, oh, please, can you get us that, or can you go buy us that from that specific store? Or so that's, there's so many things that you miss. I'll tell you, the one thing that I really miss about South Africa is our humor.
Oh,
Like
well, we're not
America,
funny in America.
yeah, but like humor is so like culturally
Yeah.
motivated
Yeah.
and influenced and like politically as well. And let me tell you, if there's one country in the world that can't take anything seriously, it's South Africa. In like
I
the
love that. Yeah.
yeah, in like the best way. We're currently going through this whole thing of like having a ton of power outages in the country. And I mean, like the memes and the jokes and but that's one thing social media helps so much with, because you really feel just close to home, and that's great. So, but yeah, I miss it so much. I go back as often and as much as I can, and I stay for as long as I can.
That's amazing. And so I want to talk about, you were Miss South Africa in 2017 and then went on to be Miss Universe. What is that process like? And emotionally too, the competition. I don't know. I have no clue, but it seems like such a big process in how you come into that and your why around it.
I always envisioned Miss South Africa as really more of a spokesperson role, more of like an ambassadorship. At least when I entered, I felt like it was a platform for young women to really elevate themselves, to gain a platform that you wouldn't have gained any other way. And specifically in South Africa, I've never felt that it was just a pageant, just pretty ball gowns, pretty dresses. Growing up watching the pageant, so many previous Miss South Africas were huge role models to me, a had a really big influence in my life pre Instagram, pre Facebook. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember a time where I specifically said, hey, I want to be Miss South Africa one day. I never grew up doing a ton of like pageants other than like the mall pageant close to our home, because you get like vouchers to the mall to go shopping if you
Yeah.
win, So but I do remember telling myself, like, that's the type of woman I want to be one day. It's always been something very influential in my life. And so it's actually a very, I would say, strenuous process. I mean,
Yeah.
from entering to competing, I think it was over 6 months. I entered like in June, and the final was like in March, on and off of interviews and appearances and challenges and all the stuff. And in the, your training, there's girls that literally put their jobs on hold or their studies on hold to be able to compete. And that's kind of how serious people take it. I remember when I entered, I was like, man, like I really have to give this my best, because coming back and going through this whole thing again, if I do not win, would be a lot. And I don't know if that's a commitment that, that I would financially, physically, emotionally be able to make. So I've worked really, really hard. And my mom always told me as a little girl, hey, Demi, if you do something, like whatever you do in life, make sure you do it well. Like if you clean homes for a living, like make
Mm-hmm.
sure those homes are the cleanest homes on this planet. If you become an actress, like make sure you know your script better than anyone. You can outwork anyone, if you're dedicated, if you're disciplined. And that was something that I've kind of implemented in my life from a young age.
Yeah, and I can see because you were a woman on a mission and you had a mission to share. And you went through, well, then you went on to win Miss Universe and teach everyone then how to be unbreakable. You went through a really traumatic experience. Can you share that? Are you open to sharing it?
Yeah. When I said earlier, South Africa made me very resilient.
Mm-hmm.
The fight against gender-based violence, especially against women and children in our country, is very real. And I think it's something that, every woman in South Africa grows up knowing about. I think, most people would be able to say that they know someone, or they know someone that knows someone that that's been affected in one way or another, whether that's a stranger in a relationship. Growing up in South Africa, it's always been something that's been kind of top of mind to look out for myself, to have my own back, to be aware, to be cognizant of my surroundings. My dad like made me learn how to change a tire on my car before I was allowed to drive my vehicle. And
Mm-hmm.
I've gone on like many safety driving courses and women's empowerment courses. And to me that was kind of normal, which now living in a different country, having a different perspective, each place has its own problems. I've traveled a ton, and that's one common thread that I know. Like one country might manage one thing better than another, but everybody has their own problems. So it's not that any place is better than another, it's just different. And since I've moved to America, I've realized that so many things that I took as normal is not supposed to be the norm.
Mm-hmm.
I was on my way to an event it was a Wednesday afternoon, broad daylight, peak hour at traffic, 5:30 in the afternoon. I was all dressed up. I was in South Africa at the time, had just like won a couple months ago. And I stopped at a red traffic light, about to turn into the parking lot. It was like the event was hosted in a mall.
Mm-hmm.
And I was about to turn, just waiting for the light to turn. And, peak hour traffic, especially in Johannesburg, South Africa, it's kind of like a shopping mall on the street. You have vendors, you have people trying to sell you sodas. Like you have people that make like the most beautiful beadwork, and people catching, public transportation home and walking. And it's just like a hustle and bustle. And so there's so much happening usually in peak hour traffic. But because I've gone through some form of training before, I was aware. I was checking my mirrors. I was not on my phone. And I'm not trying to be, the perfect, like, hey, here's the perfect way to do it. Like, no, but that was something that was really helpful in the situation. I noticed, I think it was 3 men on my left-hand side.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately remembered, hey, if they are coming for me for whatever reason, there has to be a guy on the right hand side. That's what I was taught on. And side note, we drive on the right hand side of the
Yeah.
car, and we opposite sides, right? So I'm sitting in the right hand side. And the next moment I see these men approaching me. I just had a bad feeling. I kept like hoping, praying like this, this is going to be fine. Like they're just going to maybe ask me for money or try and sell me something. But deep down, I knew, like my instinct told me like that this is something is not right. This is not going to be good. And the moment I noticed the guy on my right hand side, he walked straight towards my vehicle. And I just tried not to make eye contact, just prayed for this traffic light to turn green. Like, come on. And the next moment, the guy on the right hand side knocked on my window, and I like very briefly like glanced over to just well, one, I wanted to see what's happening, and two, I'm not just going to get out of the car for no reason and run away. While he knocked, I kind of glossed over, I ignored him, and the next moment, when he knocked again, and I looked forward, the one of the men on the other side of the vehicle pointed a gun right to my head,
Oh,
like
wow.
over the windshield, like
Yeah.
or the windscreen, like kind of lying over it. And at that moment, I realized, well, like I have three choices. I can do nothing. I can try and run, or, at that point, it wasn't necessary to fight back necessarily, but that was an option, right? But I immediately, decided to surrender, to get out of the vehicle, to get away. And that's exactly what I did. But the moment I tried running away, the guy on my side of the vehicle, after searching me, for personal belongings and stuff, grabbed me by my arm, tried to push me back into the vehicle. And I realized, well, okay, I tried to run away. That didn't work. I can still do nothing, or I can try and fight back. And I remembered, like in that moment, that the second destination will never get better than the first destination. Whatever's about to happen in your driveway is not going to get better somewhere downtown in some dark alley, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we can, I think, all agree to that. So I decided I'm not going to comply. Yes, I might get shot, but I can try and fight my way out of this. At least
Wow.
try.
Mm-hmm.
And I remembered one self defense workshop that I attended that taught us like one move, just one move, and that was how to punch someone really hard in their throat. And I was like, well, if there's ever a time that I'm going to use that skill, it's going to be now. And I tried to punch him as hard as I could in his throat. I mean, by no means did I hurt him or disable him, but I startled him enough to buy me a split second of opportunity, a small window of opportunity to get out and to run away. And that's exactly what I did. This was really traumatic. That
Yeah.
whole process was really traumatic. But Karena, running up that avenue, broad daylight, 5:30 in the afternoon, knocking on window after window after window, and nobody would stop to help me.
Really, in the cars, nobody. Like,
Nobody would
no.
stop. Yeah, like in traffic, nobody would stop.
And there were witnesses when this was happening.
The people, their windows were open. They could hear me. It was bumper to bumper traffic.
Yeah.
People could hear what I was saying. I'll never forget this one woman's face. She had her window open. I said, "Hey, I've been carjacked. Please, can you help me? The guys are literally right there. Like, please, can you let me to safety?" And she just like shooed me away, like said, get away from me,
Oh,
like, and like rolled up her window. And I'll like never forget her. I obviously like startled her and probably caught her off guard, but
yeah.
I'll never forget that moment of like not knowing what's next, looking behind, not knowing if I'm being shot in the back, not knowing if then I start thinking, are any of these like
Are
cars
they a
that I'm
part of it?
knocking on, like,
Yeah.
are they a part of it?
They're like, get
Um,
on it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right. So that I can talk a lot about, but I feel like I've talked a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just realized, after going through trauma counseling, working through this scenario, I realized like I never want to be one of those cars that decide to turn a blind eye, decide not to see, decide to look the other way. It's one thing if we don't know, but it's another thing when we know and we decide not to do anything.
Yeah. That's so. One thing you mentioned in the beginning is your intuition, and you knew, like, you felt something. What would your advice be for someone who this is happening to and their intuition?
Listen, I'm no expert. I don't have a degree in psychology or anything, but I can talk from experience. And one thing that I know is, especially as women, we've been told culturally so many times, and I see this every woman I've met from whatever country that might be. I think we can resonate with. We've been told to not make a scene, to not make a fuss, to not cause drama, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't cause drama, just behave and like be prim and proper and do what you're supposed to be doing. And I actually don't think that is what we should be doing. I don't think that we ever need to stay quiet so that somebody else can stay comfortable.
Yeah.
And if there was a moment in my life where that really came to fruition, was it was in that carjack situation. And listen, I know that a carjack situation might be very far-fetched, and that might be something that hopefully a lot of your listeners never have to go through or never experience. But that counts for that new friendship, that new relationship that you're embarking on, and there's something that doesn't feel right, and you don't want to be dramatic about it, and you don't want to cause a scene about it, so you just kind of go with it, right?
I had a situation at a gas station when I lived in LA, and my husband and I were driving to Palm Springs, and I had one of my dogs. I have 5 dogs. I know you have 3, so I
I
get
have
it.
2 dogs.
But your dogs are much.
In the back of the
Your dogs are much bigger than mine. Mine are all like 5 to 7, 8 pounds, but love them. But so I had one of them on my lap at the gas station. My husband was pumping gas, and I started looking around and being aware, and I noticed that people were starting to surround, and I was like, no, I'm in my head. It's nothing,
Yeah.
And then I started getting nervous and like thinking, and I should have, told my husband, just get in the car and let's go. But God did something where a police officer pulled up next to us and said, to my husband, get in your car. So you're about to have a carjacking. And he was like, what? She's like, just get in your car and I'm going to guide you back to the freeway and make sure you're safe.
Wow.
And so he was like, he got in the car and we drove, and the police officer helped us. She drove for a few miles behind us. And we were just quiet the whole drive to Palm Springs, just like, what could have happened because I didn't speak up. I wasn't like, Bobby, I didn't want to, and we were just like, wow, what, would have happened, especially with our dog in there. I'm like, what if they stole our dog? But, or just our life. It's just, your intuition, just, what is you went through trauma counseling after that experience. And I'm just curious, because I know with trauma, then putting yourself back in that situation again, did it take you a long time to be able to drive alone again or anything like that?
Yes, definitely. I like attended trauma counseling sessions, and we actually did, I think it's called EMDR.
I've done that. Yeah.
Yeah. And wow, like that was truly something that it's like the one where it's like the tapping therapy, right? Where like, yeah. And so that was something that was like really, really helpful. So I wasn't able to attend counseling like right away. It took like about a week for me to, get set up and like get into like sessions and stuff. And in that, I just remember like it probably took like a month for me to take a shower and to open my eyes in the shower, like washing my hair. I mean, to close my eyes in the shower, like washing my hair, like face running down my face, water running down.
I get it.
I was saying water running down my face, and I couldn't like close my eyes because I was so scared that with the water running, I wasn't going to hear if somebody was, entering my building. Oh, and with the carjack, something else that also was very traumatizing is they took my home keys, and they never ended up getting away with my car, and my car keys were in the car. So there were just a lot of, I don't know why they were there. I don't know if they were just there to grab my handbag and my personal belongings. I don't know if they were there for me. I have no idea. And I don't want to speculate, but they got away with my home keys. And that was, that was concerning. So, and then, I think I left my car literally at the mall parking lot because police did fingerprints and all that stuff. I think I left my car there for like a week, and I was like, I just don't care. Like it can stay there for as long as it needs. Like I honestly, literally don't care.
I don't want it back.
I don't want to get in it.
I'd be like, take it. I'll get something else. I wouldn't be able to get back in. But.
That's right. And so, I remember like once I got my car back and I was like, okay, like Demi, now's the time to like put your big girl panties on and like get back in this car, and like you can't have a driver forever, like, or Uber is not necessarily the safest alternative either. So I remember like getting back in my car for the first time, like being on the phone with my mom or my dad or my boyfriend at the time, or whoever that my management or whoever that was at the time, and just like the whole way driving, like just having someone on the phone. And I remember I wouldn't even necessarily speak to them. I'd just be like, hey, can you just put the phone on speaker, and I'm just gonna be driving just in case I need anything, like, can you just be here? And that was really comforting, giving myself just that yeah, just like giving myself the option to do that was very comforting. But I also would like get up at like 4 in the morning to go to the gym and like make sure I miss peak hour traffic, and like would reschedule everything in my diary so that, I don't drive between certain times of the day. And I also realized, that's not the way to live. Like I
Yeah.
can't avoid this forever. If I can, like, sure, like nobody wants to sit in traffic anyway. But if I can avoid this, I would want to. But it took a while, and I remember like probably like 3 years later, we had just gotten married, and like COVID just hit, and I was folding away laundry in our guest bedroom, and my husband was in like in our living room, like watching football. And I knew he was there because I just like literally left from there, and I'm just folding laundry in the guest bedroom that's just next door. And the next moment, like I hear somebody knocking on the guest bedroom door, like from the outside.
Mm.
And I had experienced a lot of dreams of like that I'm like yelling and nobody can hear me, or that like no
Oh yeah,
sound,
I know those.
like
Yeah.
I've definitely had a lot of dreams like that. And when that happened, when the knock happened, like when that somebody knocked, like I just like belted out like the biggest yell, and like my husband came running, and it actually was my husband that took the dogs out to go potty. And he just like the light, it was dark, so it's nighttime, so the light was on inside and I couldn't see out, but he could see in. And so he was just
That
knocking,
would
like
freak me out
waving.
too.
I know, he was just waving at me, literally like
You're like,
blink
hey,
and
and
kiss.
you're like having a panic attack.
But I don't know the psychology behind this, but after that moment of like running and like getting that yell out
Mm.
was also very freeing in a way,
Mm.
especially after having like, I don't know, those dreams. I don't even know the psychology behind this, but
Yeah.
having those dreams of feeling like I can't speak up, in a way that was even freeing.
Yeah. So, can we
So,
talk about Unbreakable a little more? Because
yeah,
obviously, this is, I would assume, what led you to start Unbreakable to empower
yeah,
women and bring in experts around self defense. So, what is
yeah.
your work with that?
Yeah, so the carjack truly served as a catalyst to me learning about more about gender-based violence, specifically in South Africa. And then it kind of snowballed into me learning about the fight against human trafficking. That
Hmm.
snowballed into me learning about labor trafficking, about bonded labor trafficking, about, I mean, the list goes on and on. And it truly is one of the greatest evils I think we face in our world today. So, I'm not saying that I was human trafficked. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that incident served as a catalyst to me learning about something I genuinely did not know existed in the year 2017. And as we're speaking today, there's an estimated, I mean, I can't even believe the number that I'm about to utter out of my mouth, but there's an estimated 50 million people trapped in human trafficking around the world. I mean,
Wow.
it's unfathomable. Then you also wonder, like, it's 150 billion plus dollar industry per year. Like there's a lot that doesn't add up. There's a lot that is not right. And you know it's not something that's easy to speak about. It's not something that's comfortable. It's not a fun conversation starter per
Yeah.
se. But like I said earlier, Karina, like once I learned about that, and once I knew that I couldn't turn a blind eye. I knew that I couldn't do nothing about this.
Right.
And I think a lot of the times we silence ourselves and we quiet ourselves because we think that we can't have a big enough impact. We think if we don't, donate $1 million, it's not going to make it any difference. If we don't start our own foundation, it's not going to be worth anything. We play it down so much, but I feel like as a community, we all, and as a country and as a world, we all have different things that we bring to the table. And so that made me take a step back and just realize, hey, what is it that I get to bring to the table? Well, one, I have a platform. I had like 60,000 followers at that time, and as in my South Africa days, and I had all these connections with self-defense experts and safety driving courses and psychologists and law enforcement and legal representatives. And I had all these people that I knew that helped me, that walked that road with me, that came alongside me, after the fact. And I realized, well, what if I bring this to women in South Africa? Like, what if I give other women the same opportunity to learn the skills and the knowledge and therefore gain those practical tools that I was able to learn before this incident? And so that's where Unbreakable was born. I started it as a confidence building workshop. Once again, a carjack situation is, not something a lot of people will experience in their lifetime, but we go through phases of self-doubt every single day in our life. And Unbreakable focuses on educating, equipping, and empowering women from all walks of life to be able to handle every single day life situations. And the key word is with confidence. How can you step up and in any day life situations? How can you go to the grocery store with confidence? How can you go and start that workout, which I know you're very, very passionate about? How can you walk into the gym with confidence? How do you end this relationship with confidence that's not right for you, that's not serving you well? Everyday life situations, how do we tackle that? And so now, a couple years down the line, we are actually having our first post hurricane season last year canceled our first Unbreakable that we were launching, and can't believe it, literally the same time this year we're sitting with the same situation. But we're having our first Unbreakable on the 7th of October here in hometown Jacksonville, Florida. And I know you had Dr. Caroline Leaf on your podcast a little bit ago. She's actually a fellow South African, believe it or not.
Yes.
She's lived here way longer than me, though. So, and then Eve Torres Gracie, who's a part of the legendary Gracie family, and they have their own woman empowerment workshops, literal self-defense workshops. So we'll have guest speakers. We're partnering with IJM, which they're an organization that do incredible work all around the world to protect and prevent and rescue people from human trafficking situations. So
I love this. So what is is it a few days or 1 day workshop, or what is it?
Yeah, so it's a 1 day workshop. I think we're starting at 10 and it's ending at around 4. I'll be speaking Dr. Caroline Leaf, who's a neuropsychologist, super incredibly smart woman. She just launched a new book. I actually have it right here. How to help your child clean up their mental mess.
Yes, I loved that interview with her because, by the way, there were so many takeaways for your child, but I was like, I'm going to implement this in my marriage. It's communication, and sometimes our husbands can be children, and I'm like, I like this tip.
Hey, you said it, not me. Well, it just comes down to communication. I'm sure they think the same of us sometimes.
Yeah, that sounds like a great event.
And we're so excited. It's gonna be fun, and we just want to have a fun day where my hope is really for all the women that attend to walk out of those doors that day and just feel like they can tackle any situation that comes their way. So yeah, I'm super excited.
Maybe I'll go. My husband's dad is in Florida. I've never educated myself on self-defense, and I think it's great. And human trafficking, I think that's really important to educate people on too, because when you were running from that car and nobody was even responding to you when you're knocking on window, I think everyone's just scared and doesn't understand how to respond because, like that's you said, they get, they're like, is this safe? But educating people on that, because if there's 50 million, you said 50 million, right?
Yeah, an estimated 50 million. It's obviously something that's very hard to track because it lives in darkness. It's not something that's out in the open per se.
Yeah.
So an estimated 50 million people trapped in some form of human trafficking. And, once again, it sounds so unfathomable. It sounds like, how will I even make a dent in, we had a briefing with a small group of highly trusted people one time where we shared some of the statistics and the things that we had learned. And I had somebody come up to me afterwards and they said, yeah, this is all great and well, trying to save a bunch of people, but what's that really going to do? Like, you really need to catch the perpetrators. And, my response to them was, Go and tell that to that young woman that's trapped in that situation. Go and tell that to her. If we can impact, if we can help bring one life into a better situation, that is worth it. That is worth it.
Absolutely.
We are called to love God and to love people. And for as long as I live, I will do my best to love people well.
I love that. I get chills too, because even with the big silence in our mission, the foundation, and everyone thinks you have to donate, a lot for our Therapy for All program, but
Yep.
it's like $5 or whatever it is, the littlest
Right.
amount. If we all come together and do good together, it has
Yeah.
that snowball effect.
And that's one thing with Unbreakable that I also felt, in that moment when I was alone in that carjack situation and nobody wanted to help me, I realized like sometimes in our life we might be bruised, we might be shaken, we might be traumatized, but when we don't walk in front of each other, not at the back of each other, but alongside each other, shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, like when we stand together, we can be unbreakable.
Yeah.
And that's why I named it Unbreakable, because it doesn't mean that we're not going to hurt. It doesn't mean that we're not going to walk through sucky situations,
Mm-hmm.
but we can walk through those situations. And there are people out there that want to help you, that want to be there for you. So, providing resources is something that's very important to us with Unbreakable as well.
So, where can someone find out how to attend your event?
Oh, girl, it's wherever on Instagram, social
Yeah.
media,
Okay.
on
We'll put it in the
website.
show notes too. We'll find it.
It's
Google
right.
it.
You're
It's
so
fine.
sweet, and we'd love to have you. Be so fun.
Yeah.
Please come. I'll save you front row seat.
Yes. So you talked to, well, first, before we get to this question, what do you do now as your number one tip for your mental health? Because I know I've been through a lot of trauma, and you can always be triggered by different things, constantly having to reshare your story, go back
Mhm.
there. But what do you do possibly on a daily for your mental health?
One of the things that I was taught in therapy was actually the more you speak about your story or what happened to you, the more it becomes a story and the emotion kind of gets removed from that. Obviously, there are things that can be very triggering. Um, I wasn't physically harmed. I got away from that situation. I got into a safe place relatively quickly. So I know that there's so many worse things that could have happened, or that so many women go through really, really awful situations. So I never want to generalize, but for me, talking about it really helped because it removed that emotion from the situation. But I've also caught myself now 6 years down the line where sometimes it feels like a story, and I have
Mm-hmm.
to remind myself that it is actually real, and it is actually okay to relive some of those emotions, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But it's how we use that to move forward, not to pull us back, but how we use that as a launching pad to be able to move forward, to be able to heal. I'm very grateful that I had really strong, amazing women in my life. My stepmom is actually a neuropsychologist herself.
Oh, wow.
So from a young age, she taught me about healthy boundary setting. She taught me, about all these things. Like, she equipped me with so many emotional and practical like tools that I could apply to my life and that I still apply to this day. My parents are divorced, and so I have four parents now. My parents are both remarried, and so I'm grateful for four extremely loving parents that are, that's always there. And I know that's not always the case for everyone. But, one thing that I also realized with that situation is that we get to choose not just who speak, we don't get to choose who speak about our life, right? Like, people can say whatever they want about our life. People talk about us, people
Mm-hmm.
say things behind our back, people might say things to us, but we get to choose. We have the power to control who we allow to speak into our life.
Yes.
And once I realized that, especially, with social media and comment sections, it gives everyone and anyone the platform to say anything they want. And
Mm-hmm.
even when it's hurtful, even when they don't think you read it, even when they don't see you see it, it's made me realize that I get to control who I allow to speak into my life. And I'm all about constructive criticism. I feel like that makes me better, but I have to make sure that where that criticism comes from is that, one, it's constructive, and two, it comes from a loving, caring place. So that's something that I constantly like fight through and constantly, kind of sift through in a way. And then it like exercising, being active, having three adorable, loving dogs, like those are all things that are just on a daily basis, something that I feel like is so good for me. I'm actually sitting in my home office at the moment, and I work from here a lot because when I travel, like I don't necessarily want to drive,
Yeah.
to our office space and stuff. So I work from home a lot, but I've had to force myself that to like get out of the house, to go and have a coffee with a friend, to like go and put makeup on, put some cute earrings in,
Yeah.
like brush my hair and put an actual outfit on. So, it's figuring out like what works for you, what makes you feel good, like what energizes you.
Yeah, definitely. Working out was what I was going to ask you next too. Like, what is your workout?
I was in such great shape a couple months ago, and I feel like I've been like the strongest I've ever been. Like like I started weight training for really the first time in my life. And it was so motivating because I always just did like high intensity interval training,
Yeah.
and I always thought like that's what I'm supposed to do. I don't want to build bulky muscles, and I had like all these stereotypical views in my mind. And right now, like in all honesty, I'll like with the current like just schedule and things that I'm working on, I'll just say like I'm just doing my best, and that's
I
okay.
love that. That is perfect. Hey,
I am just doing my best, but I'm not deciding to do nothing. Like if I can work out one time a week, that's one time a week that I did something. If I don't have the energy to deadlift 90 pounds today, I'm gonna take my dog for a walk. I'm gonna at least try and do something. I'm gonna do 10 step-ups. I'm gonna just do my best to love myself and love my body and give it what it needs to function really well. If that means I'm just going to do a stretch session, then I'm going to do that. But I'm going to try and do something. In an ideal world, I love to work out about 4 times a week. I've really started getting into weight training, and I actually started getting into it because my both sides of my family have like a really bad like back history.
mm-hmm.
Sorry, mom and dad, sharing all your secrets. But I started doing Pilates, and I started realizing, wow, I really have to be proactive, and like it's literally a thing on like both sides of my families, both of their families. I want to get ahead of this to the best of my ability. And so I realized that I need to start strengthening myself. And that's kind of how I got into weight training. And so, I mean, by no means am I building a ton of muscle, but I feel strong, and I'm able to pick things up, and I'm
Yes.
able to do things that I haven't necessarily been able to do before. And that's so encouraging and so motivating.
Yeah, I like your perspective on workouts because today I did like 10 curls, 10 presses, some
You go, girl.
squats. I was like, that's it for today.
That's
But
it.
then, I'll go to the gym or I work out here or with our app. And yeah, it's never consistent. I give myself that permission of what do you feel like today? What does your body feel like? How much
Mm,
energy do you have? And not the pressure of, having to work out 45 minutes an hour. But then some days I
yeah.
want to. And walking with your
Yeah.
dogs is like the best. I'm sure playing with the dogs in the backyard is a workout too.
It is because none of them actually like playing fetch. So I feel like I'll
You,
throw the ball and they'll run after it, but then I have to go get
that's
it.
perfect.
Like
Sprints.
get my steps. But Karina, I do want to say I also don't think that we should be, yes, we need to be kind, but sometimes kindness means pushing ourselves a
Yeah.
little bit beyond our comfort zone. And when I kind of get in that slum of like, oh, I don't feel like working out today, and then it will turn into a week of not working out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So something that's really helped me is to kind of get my husband says this so well. He always says, like, not an accountability partner, but a transparency partner,
Mm-hmm.
because you can have an accountability partner that you still lie to, but a transparency partner, you don't,
Yeah.
right? So I have my set group of girls that love working out, and sometimes it's just like, hey, we're working out tomorrow morning at this time. Here, let's go.
Yeah.
And or I'll book a workout class.
Yes.
Or once I'll like pay for it up front, and I'll know, hey, if I don't show up, like I'm gonna be charged. So somehow that's also a way to hold yourself accountable. And
Yeah.
push yourself a little bit. So
Yeah, and even today, because I was telling myself I wasn't going to work out at all, but I went and I picked up dumbbells and I said, just go. And it ended
yeah,
up being like a 15-minute workout. But I was like, once
you
you
never
like,
regret it, right?
yeah. So I just
Yeah,
started doing it. I moved my body and that was good. I was just having a little funky morning, which is fine. It happens. But I even like a 15-minute workout made me feel better.
I love that. Yeah, there is some things about the endorphins that you crave,
Yeah.
from just moving and working out.
Well, Demi, is there anything else you want to share?
No, this was so fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Of
I feel like we
course.
can chat forever and ever. My friends got me the Stanley Cup. They've been like dying over it, and I feel like such an influencer
I know. I was like, is that the cup
drinking
that
out
I
of it.
get
I
fed on
know.
Instagram and it has like a strap that comes with it or something?
I know. No, I've like refused to buy it for the longest time, and here I am sipping out of a straw. But anyway,
Well, you're staying hydrated
I actually say you drink more when you drink through a
through straw.
straw.
I can see that.
Apparently. Yeah, I can see that too.
I
So
might have just been influenced because I've been thinking about it. I'm going to go order a Stanley Cup.
hey, it does help that it fits in the cup holder. I will say that is, and the handle, like going take my dogs for a walk. That I mean, that is kind of well, I don't know why I'm talking about a cup, but anyway.
All right. Well, thank you, Demi.
Thank you so much for having me, Karina. You have a great
You
day.
too.
The big silence. The big silence.